Hi, this is Felipe and welcome to Second Earth Alternative. Alright, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about alien abductions. Specifically, I wanted to go over some of the details regarding the cases that we talked about earlier. Now, if you guys saw my earlier episode called Alien Abduction Case Studies, I had basically a number of different abductees who were presenting these fantastical stories, but more to that, they also presented evidence, which some people weren't really satisfied with. They thought that me taking the accounts at face value was kind of just not a good way of interpreting the information. But what I can say about these abductees is that none of them have anything to gain, and they gave me, so much correspondence. What I highlighted to you guys, it was just like a very small piece of the pie. They really had a lot of details to their story, but what really convinced me was the overlap in their stories, because though some people might have thought that it could have been sleep paralysis, and I've gone through sleep paralysis before. I used to study psychology, so I've researched, I know what sleep paralysis is about, and I can tell you that the specificity of these cases go way beyond the possibility of sleep paralysis as being an explanation for this. These abductees, they talk about like different beings. Sometimes they're abducted by multiple beings. They actually describe how the beings communicate with them. They describe the themes of the discussions. They describe how the beings look like. You're telling me that sleep paralysis is just going to create reptilian-looking beings in your head, or it's going to create like gray, bug-eye-looking beings in your head? No, it's not going to create that type of specificity. So we can't just peg all these accounts as sleep paralysis because we're scared of it? We really, guys, this is probably one of the most important truths that we might be ever run across. The fact that our entire species is actually being abducted. We're talking about possibly explaining away so many of these missing kids cases, right? Especially the ones that happen in those neck of the woods in the forests. It just doesn't seem like the amount of cases, like if you guys saw that movie 411, it just doesn't seem like it can just be explained normally. It seems like the alien abduction might be an actual feasible explanation for why so many people go missing, especially when one of the abductees who talked to me was actually discussing how two kids had gone missing 5 minutes from where him and his brother were abducted. And then also recently, I just got a brand new email from a brand new abductee. She basically wrote me that she is saying that she was talking with this woman and she was claiming it wasn't a human one, but she seemed very motherly and loving towards me. She had white skin and large, pretty eyes, and a couple of others about some sort of like life that I had lived with them. That's what they were telling me. So this abductee is basically talking about some kind of motherly, white-skinned, like big-eyed woman. And if you guys saw this movie in which Tyler from Secure Team had just posted, previewed, called Australian Skies, my God, guys, look, I had no idea about this movie. And when I saw it, I was like, holy crap, this is like exactly what the abductees that contacted me, which we were shooting this episode days before anything was ever previewed from the documentary, and it basically, the accounts basically matched. The account of this new girl talking about, having this motherly figure, that is exactly what that guy who, in Australian Skies, who was taken through this hypnotic stage, that was exactly what he experienced. And guys, look, there is an actual theoretical basis for alien abductions. Like, think about it. These alien abductions are being claimed to go through walls, right? Now, the only thing that we know that can just jump through physical matter are like quantum particles. But I don't know if you guys saw my earlier episode, but I had showcased the scientists explaining that quantum physics is not a science of small. It's not a science of shrinking to the smallest particles. Rather, it's a science of isolation. Meaning, if you can somehow take a huge object and isolate it from the outside space-time continuum in kind of its own gravity bubble, its own interdimensional bubble, then essentially you could get that object to act like a quantum particle. And what I found so fascinating is that Bob Lazar, who was the supposed physicist who worked at Area 51, well, he had claimed that one of the propulsion systems that the UFOs were using was an element that went up to the number 115. And he was claiming that at this level, the gravity of the element is so strong that it actually starts overtaking the weak and the strong nuclear forces. And then in this kind of overlap, there is essentially a gravity bubble that they amplify around the craft, and this is essentially and they kind of just pop this bubble given the direction that they want to go. So he was describing a mechanism of isolation. So he was basically describing how they can take a huge craft and make it into a quantum particle. That completely matches the concept that alien abductees are seeing these things basically going through walls. So I decided to look a little bit further, and I went on the internet and I found this forum that basically the theme of it, or the subject of it, was how can gravity overtake the strong and weak nuclear forces? And there was a physicist, Keith, who described it very interesting. He said, when atoms get too big with so many protons and neutrons in their nucleus, the strong nuclear forces cannot stretch across the nucleus to hold all the particles in. So there's a kind of a maximum size for atoms, which we're approaching now. In other words, we don't expect to see atoms much above the atomic number of, get this, 116. So this physicist, who had absolutely no knowledge of Bob Lazar, in a way kind of backed up Bob Lazar's claim that at this high level of an element, there is some kind of overlap that happens between gravity and internuclear force. And he is claiming that this overlap, this amplitude, the way of amplifying this around the craft, is the mechanism of isolating the crafts to get through walls. Guys, I'm telling you the mechanisms here. I'm telling you how it's possible in a very basic way. I mean, I'm not a physicist. I don't understand this to a high degree, but I'm just putting pieces together from what other individuals are saying. One other thing that I wanted to show you guys is one of the abductees, he actually decided to send more images. Now, what's so cool is I actually processed these images through EZTrue, which is a photo authentication program. And guess what? These images are 100% authentic. You can actually authenticate yourself if you want. I'll give you the original file if need be. But what I really want to show you guys is these objects over here. Now, if you take a look at the image, the first one doesn't look that spectacular, but if you really zoom in, you can see that there's definitely a physical object in the background, and this was taken straight off his camera. There was no alterations done. So you guys can do your own guesses as what you think this is. If this is an airplane, a bird. But here, this is not the only image. Let me show you a second image that he has. Okay, now this one's a little more clear. And it's kind of obvious that this isn't like a bird, or it's not an airplane. And this is just like another small piece of the pie of all the evidence that these abductees are compiling. But the main thing that I want to talk to you about was this concept that these abductees, they are, I mean, their stories are not just overlapping with each other, they're overlapping with the documentaries that like Secure Team is sending days after we came out with our abduction episode. So is this not like independent confirmation for you guys? Like, do you guys not see that there is more to this than sleep paralysis? So guys, yeah, I mean, this was kind of like a very talkative episode. I know that we went through some topics a little bit quick, but I just kind of wanted to give you guys more detail and kind of let you guys know that I'm not believing this out of bullshit. Like, there's legitimate reasons why I think these abduction cases are for real. And it really saddens me because these people have absolutely no support in anything, not the academic community, not the psychology community. I mean, there's like, what, like a couple psychologists that actually genuinely believe in this. They're actually working in tangent with these people. You know, there's a lot of scams out there. They're just taking advantage of these people. And just hearing their stories just makes me sad. So I just want everybody who watches the alien abduction episodes just to be aware and to not peg it as sleep paralysis right away without first really listening to the details of the story and trying to understand what it means for them. Thank you so much for sticking around, guys. This is Felipe Osorio, signing out.